Here are our homework solutions for day 6.6. Question 1 says find the values of the sine, cosine, and tangent ratios for each angle given below. Give both a fraction and a decimal answer for each one. Round decimals to 3 places. Okay, so here's our triangle. And our first question, A here, looks for the sine of angle P. In fact, A, B, and C all deal with the angle P. So P becomes our reference angle. So the sine of P is opposite over hypotenuse. There's our labels for each of the sides. Opposite over hypotenuse becomes 4/5, which is a decimal of 0.8. The cosine of angle P, well, the cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, so that will be 3/5, which becomes a decimal of 0.6. The tangent of P will be the opposite over adjacent, which is 4/3, and the decimal is 1.33. Now, for questions D, E, and F, they all deal with angle Q as the reference angle. So we'll mark the reference angle here, and this changes the labels, which you can see in the diagram now. So the sine of angle Q, opposite over hypotenuse, becomes 3/5. The decimal is 0.6. The cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse, is 4/5, which is 0.8. And the tangent, opposite over adjacent, is 3/4, which is 0.75. In these next questions, we're looking at X as the reference angle. So if X is the reference angle, these are our labels. So the sine of X, opposite over hypotenuse, will be 24/25, which is 0.96 as a decimal. The cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse of X, is 7/25, which is 0.28 as a decimal. The tangent, opposite over adjacent of reference angle X, is 24/7, which is 3.429. Now, for questions J, K, and L, our reference angle changes. Now we're dealing with angle Y. So we'll mark our reference angle. Our labels change. Now the sine of Y, opposite over hypotenuse, is 7/25, or a decimal of 0.28. The cosine, adjacent over hypotenuse of Y, is 24/25, our decimal of 0.96. And our tangent, opposite over adjacent of Y, is 7/24, a decimal place, or a decimal number of 0.292. Question 2. Find the length of the unknown side rounded to 1 decimal. Well, first we look at our reference angle, which is 32. So our labels will look at this. We want to determine which trig ratio to use, our sine, our cosine, or our tangent. Now, relative to our reference angle of 32, we're being asked to find the hypotenuse, and we're given the adjacent. Adjacent and hypotenuse deal with cosines. So we can say that the cosine of our reference angle, 32, is adjacent over hypotenuse. In this case, the cosine of 32 equals 120 over x. Now this becomes an algebra problem where we have to solve for x. So by cross multiplying, we can get the cosine of 32x equals 120. Therefore, x by itself equals 120 divided by cosine 32. Now it becomes a problem for our calculator. The first thing I need to do is to make sure that my calculator is set to degrees. Right here, I can see that it is set to radians. So I'll come down, and on this calculator, I'll click Mode. I'll use my arrow keys and select degrees. Click Enter in clear. And now when you look up here, you can see that the mode has been changed to degrees. Now we can start putting in our trig function. So we've got x equals 120 divided by the cosine of 32. So I'll write 120 divided by, and I'm going to use brackets just to be safe. Now I want the cosine of 32, so I'll go cos 32, close my brackets, press enter, and I'm given a value of 141.501, which I'll round off to 141.5. Our next question, find the length of the unknown side rounded to 1 decimal. So our reference angle is 63. So relative to that reference angle, here are our labels. Now we need to determine which trig ratio to use, the sine, the cosine, or the tan. We're being asked to find the opposite, and we're given the hypotenuse. So the trig ratio that deals with opposites and hypotenuse is the sine. So we can write the sine of our reference angle 63 equals opposite over hypotenuse, or the sine of 63 equals x over 15. Now that we've set up our equation, sine 63 equals x over 15, this becomes an algebra problem. So we can cross multiply and say that 15 times the sine of 63 equals x. Now we go to our calculator and multiply 15 times sine 63. So in this question, we've established that x is equal to 15 times the sine of 63. So first, making sure that we're in degree mode, we'll figure out the sine of 63, close our bracket, and multiply that by 15 to give us an answer of 13.36, which we can round up to 13.4. Our next question is looking for us to solve the value of x. So our reference angle is 42 degrees. So relative to our reference angle, there's our labels. Now we need to determine which trig ratio to use. We're being asked to find the adjacent, and we're given the opposite. So adjacents and opposites, or opposites over adjacents, deal with the tangent ratio. So we can write the tan of 42 equals opposite over adjacent, where the tan of 42 equals 32 over x. Use our algebra skills. Tan of 42x equals 32. X equals 32 divided by tan 42. And now we're ready for our calculator. Our calculation is x equals 32 divided by tan 42. 32 divided by tan 42. Click enter. 35.53, rounding to 35.5. In this question, our reference angle is 71 degrees. So relative to that, here are the labels for our opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent. Step 2, what trig ratio are we going to use? Well, we're given the opposite and we're being asked the hypotenuse. So that means that we'll be using the sine trig ratio. So we can write the sine of 71 equals opposite over hypotenuse. Sine of 71 equals 85 over x. A little cross multiplication. Sine 71x equals 85. Isolate x. X equals 85 divided by 7, or sine of 71. Bring our calculator into play. We need to calculate x equals 85 divided by sine 71. 85 sine 71. Enter. Gives us 89.89, rounding to 89.9. Question E. We're given a reference angle of 78 degrees. So relative to the reference angle, here are our labels. Step 2, we're given our adjacent and we're being asked for the opposite. So the trig ratio that deals with opposites and adjacents is the tangent ratio. So we'll write the tan of 78 equals opposite over adjacent. The tan of 78 equals x over 11. Little cross multiplication gives us tan 78 equals x over 11 again. Sorry for that. X equals 11 times tan 78. And we'll bring our calculator in to help us. We need to calculate x equals 11 times the tan of 78. 11 times tan 78, which gives us an answer of 51.75, which will round to 51.8. Question F. Our reference angle is 70 degrees. So relative to our reference angle, here are the labels. We are being asked to find the opposite, and we are given the hypotenuse. So our trig ratio will be the sine. So the sine of 70 equals opposite over hypotenuse. The sine of 70 will equal x over 25. Cross multiply. X equals 25 times sine 70. Go to our calculator. We need to calculate x equals 25 times sine 70 times sine 70 gives us a value of 23.49, which will round to 23.5. Question G, our reference angle is 27. So relative to that, there's our labels. We're being asked to find x with the opposite, and we're given the adjacent. So our opposite and adjacent will refer to our tangent trig ratio. So we'll write the tan of 27 equals opposite over adjacent. The tan of 27 equals x over 22. Cross multiply. X equals 22 times the tangent of 27. Go to our calculator. We need to calculate x equals 22 times tan 27. Tan, which gives us 11.2. H, our reference angle is 69 degrees. So we'll put our labels relative to that. We're being given the opposite and asked to find the hypotenuse. So that means that we'll be dealing with the sine trig ratio. So we can say that the sine of 69 equals 150 over x. Cross multiply. Isolate x. And then go to our calculator. We need to calculate x equals 150 divided by sine 69. 150 divided by sine 69, which gives us 160.67, which will round to 160.7.